Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's learning clinic. As you all are aware, Wikimedia is largely around knowledge production. And so today we are going to also learn another form of the knowledge production for Wikipedia, which is oral knowledge. Next slide. So basically, this clinic is on oral knowledge documentation on Wikimedia projects. We have 3 sharers, 1 from the foundation and 2 from the community, who have all had extensive knowledge on oral documentation. So they were going to be walking us through the processes of making a successful project around oral documentation. And also we are going to learn the various problems associated with it and how you can get over some of those problems. Next slide. So as you are aware, as you are all aware, Let's Connect, it's a peer learning program that is operating as a joint community and foundation-led initiative. I think we are in our 3rd year of Let's Connect, and so far we've had a number of learning clinics on various topics within the Wikimedia movement, seeking to use our peers to learn a lot of the work that we've been doing as volunteers. And with Let's Connect, we are all here to learn, have a good time. No, there's no right or wrong answer. If you feel we want to empower as many volunteers as possible for them to be able to learn something and also be sharers. And so you don't have to be worried about anything that's going to happen. We also the clinic is around the friendly space policy. So anything that we do, we make sure that we abide by those policies of the Wikimedia Foundation. Yeah, next slide. So today we are going to basically learn about oral documentation. And also we are going to learn from the sharers, the different oral documentation projects that they've run within their community. So this is going to be a very interactive session. So brace yourself. Next slide. Yeah, so the agenda for today is going to be simple, the brief introduction, which is what I've just done. There's going to be an icebreaker before the session, and then we are going to go through each sharer's presentation in a 20-minute each, and then we will take a quick question, and then we'll do the breakout sessions. And then after the breakout sessions, we'll do a reflection. Next slide. I think, yes, now we get to the breakout session. My colleague Gorana will lead that session, and then we take it from there.
Thank you, Justice, and thank you all for joining us. One thing that I forgot to say is that we have translation into French and Spanish, so make sure to go to interpretation, like a globe icon on your screen, and you can listen in French or Spanish. We'll have a short icebreaker now, and we are curious to know what is memorable oral story or tradition from your culture or community? I know that most of those stories are pretty long, and we do not have like the capacities to share all of that, but maybe if some of you want to add your like a short story here, or maybe open your mic to share that with us, we would be more than happy. I'm coming from Serbia, and Serbia has a lot of tradition and a lot of oral story that comes from so many generations behind. And some of them we successfully documented, but many of them not. And unfortunately, because of that, many of them are lost or changed. So that's not very cool. But we are looking forward to hear something interesting, memorable, or some interesting tradition from your country. I remember a few days ago, I was reading some like a news portal or something like that. And because many of our traditions are related to religion, so there was like some holiday coming, some saints, something around that. And it is said that you should not nap, like take a nap during that day, because you will have a headache throughout the year. So a lot of them are not that cool, but we will talk about so many interesting things today that we can document and preserve from getting forgotten or something or getting changed. So we have stories of farm worker life back in the 1950s from my grandmother. That's interesting. Does anyone want to maybe open your mic and tell us a little bit more about that? We have a link to the icebreaker in the chat, so make sure to enter, or maybe you can write your story in the chat so we can talk a little bit more about that.
That was actually my sticky note. Hi, everyone. Cassie Casares coming from Oakland, California, USA. My family are Mexican Americans, also known as Chicanos, with the Xicanos. And my parents and my grandparents and generations before used to be migrant farm workers across Texas into California. And I just hear stories all the time of what that lifestyle was like, working on the farms and waking up at 4:30 in the morning before the sunrise and working with other Latinos and Latinx people from Central and South America on the farms. And that's a little bit of my oral story.
Thank you so much, Cassie, for sharing that. Justice, I saw you put a comment in the chat. Would you like to tell us more about this?
Yes, so in the account part of Ghana, so the accounts are like an ethnic group in Ghana. And one of the folk stories that is usually told to kids when we're growing up is the Anansi story, the story of the spider. So in the folktale, the Anansi is known to be the most wisest of all animals. And that story has resonated with us growing up. So usually we refer to the Anansi as the spider, as a very wise animal. So these are one of the folk tales that have been told to us in the past. You might never see that in any written book, but then it's folk tale stories that are passed on from time to time. Yeah.
That's very interesting, Justice. I'm a little bit scared of spiders, so I would love to see them more as a wise animal in the future. Does anyone else wants to share maybe their story? Oh, Merit said it's same here. But that's a very interesting story. We have recitating poetry in our local dialect as children at school. Oh, that's interesting. That's very nice. Does anyone who ever wrote this, do you want to open your mic and tell us a little bit more about that?
That was me, Garana. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, Lucy.
Yay. There's a tradition in Scotland that in January for Robert Burns Night, you do some poetry recitation in the Scots language. I'm from the northeast of Scotland, where we have our own little dialect called Doric. And when we were little, we would learn poems by ear and recite them. There was one about a toad, which we call a puddock. So I learned one about a puddock and one about wanting to be a bus conductor. And they're all coming back to me now, but they were all quite silly, but we would learn them as a way of learning our local language. And I can still remember some of them now. So yeah, it's interesting.
Thank you very much, Lucy, for sharing that. Yeah, it's very much to nurture also local dialect and the way that maybe people spoke before in the history, and it's a very good way of remembering that. Okay, so let's see if we have some. Okay, so thank you very much for sharing your stories and traditions today. In this learning clinic, we will learn how to document that It's not that easy, especially in the Wikimedia movement, where we have to have a reference for everything we do. So let's learn how we can do that. And let's learn a little bit more about oral knowledge in general. So I give the floor to Sakti. Thank you for being our sharer today.
Thank you so much, Corana. Hello, everyone. I hope you are well. So, first of all, I would like to thank Sadip, uh, my colleague from Wikimedia Foundation, who gave me the opportunity to me as a sharer in this forum because oral knowledge and also heritage is an issue that very close to my heart. So, I would like to thank you, Sadip, for this opportunity. My name is Sakti. I'm working as Senior Partnerships Manager in the Wikimedia Foundation, handling the ESEAP region, East, Southeast Asia, and Pacific. Throughout my work, I've been working establishing collaborations with private and public institutions in the regions, ranging from technology, products, and currently, I had the opportunity to work on heritage sector. Along with Sadib, I work together for a program called Wikisource Loves Manuscript, which is very successful when we manage to digitize endangered Indonesian manuscript throughout the country. This is very interesting because I want to share, apart from the definition of oral knowledge as well as the past experience of Wikimedia Foundation handling similar project, this is also a story of mine. Maybe we can move to the next slide. A long time ago, when I was kid, my grandmother, before I go to bed, always tell this story. When people in my city, I belongs to a Javanese culture in Indonesia, and I grew up in a town called Yogyakarta. This city has so many history and also heritage. And one day, before I go to bed, my grandmother always share this story. One day, when people of Yogyakarta, is forgotten on their traditions and the ethics, the king of the mountain will be angry and it will awaken big dragon in the southern seas, and that's the moment when the world starts shaking. Believe it or not, some of the researchers see this as a oral knowledge or history of the people in my city in, that discuss the interaction of volcano and earthquake. But the most interesting thing is my grandmother told me the first sign is when birds flying from south to north. 18 years ago, 18 years ago, it was in 2006. In the evening, I was with my brother at that time, and we watching TV, and we saw birds flying from south to the north. At that time, we didn't realize what's going on. We just think that maybe it's just a migration pattern of birds. But in the morning, our city was struck by 6.3 Richter scales of earthquake. Many people lost their lives. And in that moment, I recall everything that my grandmother told me before I going to bed when I was kid. This is my personal experience on how local folklore can warn us here in the presence. Apart from that, last year I was so excited to become part of the organizing team of Wikimania 2023 when I had interaction with the Taiwan indigenous ethnic group called Paiwan community. We had a lovely conversation and they shared that their culture is very rich. Their culture is very rich because this knowledge has been passed on from generation to generations. but you cannot find any books or printed materials that explain their culture. Why? Maybe we can move to the next slide. In this world, we have two cluster of knowledge, the printed one and the oral one. Printed knowledge such as books, journals, magazine, newspaper is privileged as authentic source of citable materials. This is very common source of knowledge that we can see in the Western world. But in the southern hemisphere of the world, it's different. Very different. I'm coming from the Southeast Asia region, and uh, on Sunday, I just flying back to Jakarta from Asia Conference 2024. We were having that conference in Sabah, Kota Kinabalu, the Borneo part of Malaysia. When I was talking to the local Sabahan, most of their knowledge about everything is passed down through oral. And we can imagine that this abundance of knowledge that's scattered all across the Southeast Asia archipelago is there but not published. This is something that very interesting. I also added one picture that was taken in Wikimedia 2023, where the Atawera New Zealand community did a cultural performance. And as you can see there, the lady on the stage telling story, and the story was about the first um, ships, the British ships coming in to New Zealand. As you can see, the majority of the people in Asia region, in maybe Asia Pacific regions, are very, we can say, you know, produce the knowledge through oral means. This is something that we Wikimedia Foundation acknowledge, and maybe we can move to the next slide. Let's take a step back. I will bring you to 2011. There was a project called Oral Citations Project. This project was undertaken by one of the Wikimedia Foundation Advisory Board members, Mr. Achal Prabala. The purpose of this project itself is to help overcome a lack of published materials in emerging languages on Wikipedia. I really like how he phrased this. Maybe you guys all almost always hear this phrase: imagine a world in which every single person on the planet is given free access to the sum of all human knowledge. But the problem is, if we're talking about sum of human knowledge, it is far greater than the sum of printed knowledge. Far greater. As a result of this disparity, everyday common knowledge cannot enter Wikipedia because they're not written down. This is such, you know, lost opportunity. We don't want to lose out this potential expansion of knowledge in every language. In response to that, the project was planned in three Wikipedia languages, in Malayalam, Hindi, and Sepedi. Mr. Achal Prabala and his team start to document it, statements, and also uh, insights that coming from experts across the countries in India and also in South Africa. Let's dive down to it. Let's move to the next slide. You can find, we can say, the documentary movie. This is very interesting, of Mr. Achal works in Wikimedia Commons as well, for your context. Based on his research, he managed to find numerous insights coming from 5 different cities in the world: Delhi, Johannesburg in South Africa, Limpopo, Bangalore, and Kannur. In Delhi, there was an interview with Miss Urvasi Butalia. She mentioned an, a very strong statement about women. Women who held knowledge that was important apparently didn't themselves think it was all important. From here, we can see a sense of lack of confidence or uncertainty among some people whether the orally transmitted knowledge is not worthy or not, which is such a shame. And when we move to Johannesburg in South Africa, we find an expert that mentioned the idea of oral culture as being something exclusively available to societies such as India and South Africa with with smaller publishing volume is disproved. Why? In turn, in the Western culture, there is also rich traditions of oral culture. She mentions the original story of Red Riding Hood, which is grimmer, which is grimmer, darker. But in order to adapt to the quote unquote civilized Christian culture, they turn it as a fun and also, somehow not dark story. When we fly to Limpopo, South Africa, there was a discussions on traditional games. And when the audio interviews conducted there is a span range of opinions on the rule of this game, for instance, and also the receptions of younger generation on this traditional game. Hence, a more comprehensive this promising a more comprehensive article that could accumulate the real difference of opinion, much like print sources. We can do cross-reference throughout this oral culture. And now let's fly to Bangalore, India. There is another strong statement from Gita Narayanan. Coming from a culture where so little is written down, do we then say we know nothing? Of course not. Of course not. This is only tools. I would say printed knowledge, books, magazine, newspaper is just tools. But the essence of it is the most important thing, what is written down there, right? But in oral knowledge, it's what is transmitted to oral means. Then, if we see in Kanur, scholarly books in native language form a tiny fraction of a library's collections because the majority of the works being in English. It's happening also in many countries in Southeast Asia where I work. In Indonesia, we have Indonesian and English collections in many universities, libraries, in many regional libraries, but only few regional languages books. It also happens in Singapore, Malaysia, and the Philippines, when we can say it's also affected with, the colonial culture brought by the Westerner to Southeast Asia, which is sad, which is sad. So let's move to the next slide. This, the previously mentioned project serve as, we can say, uh, trigger for me to explore further partnership because I'm working the partnership side of the house. How we can see future explorations. I'm talking about a concrete work on this oral knowledge. There are two possibilities that I envision. The first is work with Taiwan Wikipedia. the Wikimedia from Taiwan that work in their own indigenous language, which I met them during Wikimedia conference last year. They are interested to conduct an oral citation project because of there is no printed knowledge coming from their culture. Even though during the Japanese colonial era, there are some researchers coming in to understand their culture, but it is not sufficient. They've been living there for thousands of years, and the knowledge itself coming from, oral passes down from generation to generations. And the next one is in Latin America when we are exploring collaboration with YU Wikipedia. The concept is same, oral citation, because the Native Americans there must be possesses abundance knowledge that is not printed. So, folks, I'm really hope that after these discussions, we can, you know more about the examples of the work from Olusha and Amrit, and also in the end of the session, we can discuss further how we can work together to preserve the oral knowledge. And this is the end of my presentation. I will hand it over back to you, Gorana.
Thank you very much, Sakti, and thank you for introducing us to this topic. I think we are all aware that it's very hard when we have oral citations, and I think we are not still aware how privileged we are today because we have written citation, we have like a reference for something that is happening. So let's hear our case study number one from Olushola. The floor is yours, and then we will have a quick recap where you can start asking your questions or sharing your experience. Thank you, Sakti, one more time. Olushola, please open your mic. Sorry, we cannot hear you. You are muted.
I'm so sorry. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah. Thank you, Gorana and Sakti, for that very comprehensive slide. And it was quite an eye-opener. As already mentioned, my name is Olaniya Olushola from Lagos, Nigeria. I'm the president, Wikimedia User Group Nigeria. I have been around since 2015 and I've done quite a lot within the wiki movement, starting from the documentation of women in Nigeria, into diving into different Wikiloves events. And I've also recently, I'm working on digitization, oral knowledge digitization. So today I'm going to talk to us about the telling Nigerian story as a case study of oral history documentation in indigenous languages. Can I go to the next slide? Next slide. So ordinarily, when there's a project, the questions we need to ask is, what are your motivations? We're motivated on the ground that Nigeria happened to be.
Olushola, sorry to interrupt. Can you please bring your mic back? That's perfect. So we can see you, hear you better.
Okay. So one of the few questions that one might need to ask in any project is, what are the motivations behind a particular project? And as a team, we're motivated on the ground that there are quite a lot of languages spoken in Nigeria, and a sizable number of them are going into extinction right at the front of us, while we are finding it difficult to save them. Nigeria happened to have over 500 indigenous languages with over 300 tribes. The 500 languages that we have in Nigeria equate to 25% of the entire languages spoken in Africa. So you could imagine if 500 languages in Africa were disappeared, you can pretty experience what is going to look like and what is going to go out with it. So our first task is to look at how can we preserve this knowledge. Also, another drive is that in the Nigeria education sector, out of all these 500 languages, only 3 of these languages are acceptable as a means, as a subject, not even used for teaching. They are being used as subjects. Yoruba, Igbo, and Hausa are those 3 languages that are being taught in class. So also, English is the only is the colonial language used during the pre-independent period in Nigeria. And after the independence, it became the official language in the country. And the last but not the least, sometimes in 2015, United Nations predicted that one of these language, Igbo language, is going to go into extinction in the year 2025. Actually, I don't know whether this is true, but already we're in 2024 and the Igbo language is still waxing stronger. Igbo language is being spoken by over 30 to 40 million people in Nigeria. If this happens, that means we are going to wipe off over knowledge around over 25 billion people. So these are some of the things that that stood as part of the drive to hire my members and my community members on the use of preserving our knowledge using our indigenous languages. Next slide, please. So what is unique in this project? The uniqueness of this project can also be drawn from some of those things I mentioned earlier. We are one of the most diverse in Africa. We are the most diverse nations with over 500 indigenous language, as I mentioned, with over 300 ethnic groups. So it was pretty difficult for us to exhibit in different form and in different ways. So, and also globally, Nigeria happened to be the 7th most populous nation in the world. And also one of those things that makes this project unique is also that, as I mentioned earlier, that we have 500 indigenous languages and over 300 tribes also. And I also know that I also mentioned earlier that only 3 of these languages are being taught in university and educations. And none of these languages is used as a means of teaching in education. I was posed with this question in Israel. If any of the indigenous language is being used for teaching in our tertiary or basic institution. And the question was no, because all I know is that English is the only means for teaching students in school. So that is the reason why many of these languages are not popular. They are not used to support commerce. They are not used to support any form of business transaction. They are just there for speaking sake. Next slide, please. So, and the project that we started to salvage this scenario, although it is work in progress at the moment, because out of 500 languages so far, we've only been able to document pretty above 100 languages. So we still have quite a lot of works to do. So we have the Nigeria oral history documentations, which is aimed to produce audio visuals of indigenous speaker narrating their story in their immediate languages. Just as I've said earlier, this project, yes, we know there are quite a lot of oral knowledge areas, but we focus on using indigenous language to preserve our stories, to preserve our history, to preserve the uniqueness among the indigenous speakers. Next slide, please. So the beauty of this project is you could see it in the milestone covered. One of the first things that we did in this project is the recruitment of professionals, because we understand that this is a project that is new to us. When we started 3 years ago, it was new. We haven't involved in this type of project before. So we have to engage a professional in form of film producer, that is a documentary personality. We also have, because we know understand that we need to record people speaking, and we don't just want to have just an ordinary videos. We want to have people speaking in their traditional setting and also using their indigenous language to tell their stories. So we know that language is, when people are talking, it could look boring because just person sitting in one place and speak for 30 minutes, it's likely to be boring. So the only way that could make it catchy is when we involve a visual that will be quite engaging onto others. So that's one of the reasons why we'll engage a film producer to produce some of those videos. Another person that will also engage is document personnel officer, because we know also that to do this project, because it's enormous, it is important for us to keep proper metadata of each of the video. So if this is not done properly, going to the field is going to be useless. So we engage a professional document processing person that helps in documenting location, the speaker, this gender, the type of language, the date that the video was taken, and every necessary things that's involved on each of the videos are documented and kept properly for uploading purposes. Then, because we do not want to come up with a video that is not going to make sense, one of the primary agenda we have is we're going to travel down to places where the speaker reside. So at the moment, we have been able to travel to over 150 places in Nigeria to look for a video, to look for a language. How did we get to do this? So at the beginning, we have to list out all the languages that we want to document. And we have to list them out by their name, by the speaker, by the tribe, by the location and state. So we have a broadsheet of what we need. And we have to categorize them, because Nigeria happens to be is a very large country with over 36 states and over 776 local governments. So to travel to 36 states with over 776 local government is not a joke. So we have to compartmentalize language based on location and region. So when we started from Southwest. In Southwest of the country, we have 6 states with over 60 something local governments. And each of the local government also have districts where we have villages and the like. So the numbers are many. So we have to do our planning properly so that when we go to a particular area, we know before we leave where we're coming from, the language that we're expecting to capture in that area, and the people in the place also will have been ready for us to meet with us. And we also understand that there are areas where there's going to be high risk area. So we need to partner with institutions in the areas where we want to go and do our audiovisual recording to give us the soft landing in talking to the traditional rulers, in talking to the language speakers. And at times we have to pay so much money to even talk to the some of the I don't know how to describe them. They are the landlords. We have to give them a lot of money to be able to access some locations to meet speaker of a particular language. At times when we don't give money, we also have to buy some traditional materials that they would like to see. So when you give that to them, they are happy to to allow you to record their language. And, because it's Africa, culture is quite germane and important. So we also need to respect the culture, tradition, and art of people that we visit to record their language. So all these dynamics come into play when we want to to record one video. So it is not a small project and it's not meant for the kids, but you need to be brave and you need to be ready. We can as well sit down in a location and do all the recording. But I and my team member decided to bring culture, to bring tradition, to bring the reality to this project. It is important to travel down to where we could see the speaker. So that is part of what we have done. We partner with different language speakers, institutions, and community. So as part of what we do, because it's about language, and in Nigeria we have, I think at the moment, 5 established Wikipedia: the Yoruba Wikipedia, the Igbo Wikipedia, the Hausa Wikipedia, the Ngbe Wikipedia. So what we do is, for a particular scene or region that we want to capture, we know that any of this Wikipedia community that are close to this area will work closely with them to be sure that when some of these videos are properly documented, these people can help us in using them to improve Wikipedia pages that relate to some of these projects. Although we have issues with some of these, with the use of the videos on Wikipedia, because quite a number of Wikipedia platforms feel that, especially in English Wikipedia, they feel that you can't use videos as a means of citation on some of the pages. So it is still something that we are still trying, because they feel that how can they verify some of the claims that is being made on the video. So these are some of the things that we are still trying to work around to be sure that, yes, these videos are accepted, are reliable sources that can be used to support claims by indigenous languages, indigenous knowledge, and by indigenous speakers. And one of the key areas also that we've been able to attract successes are in the area of donation of these materials to universities and research institute. Before we started this project, we are aware of the challenges that researchers in Nigeria, especially those that focus on languages, are having in getting material like this to support their research work. So when we finish some of the works that we have done, we've been able to donate the materials to minimum, at least at the moment, like 5 universities in Nigeria. And then last but not least, we have developed, because we know that for us to create more visibility for these materials, we should not restrict it only to Wikimedia Commons where it is at the moment uploaded. We have created a website where non-Wikimedians can visit some of those videos and can relate with them. We're also working on creating a app that could be uploaded on a phone that you can use. And at the moment also, we have created, what's it called? YouTube. Some of these videos are YouTubes that anyone can use at any time. Last slide, and that's the end of it. The last slide. So these are the resources where you can engage with some of our videos. We have a gallery. The gallery is the videos on Commons, and YouTube is the videos on the internet. You can go to the YouTube and see some of the videos. And we have created a website with a special domain name that relates to Wikimedia Nigeria, where you can access to also watch the videos. So I'm so glad to the organizer of this learning clinic for the opportunity to have me talk about this project. Thank you.
Thank you, Olushola. Thank you all for listening to these amazing slides. Now we have 5 minutes time to recap. And at the beginning of this part of the session, I would like to notify you all that maybe if you were planning to ask some questions to Sakti, you can do that now because he will leave a little bit earlier our learning clinic today. So feel free to ask him your questions now, but let's recap what we have heard. So we had an amazing slides from Sakti where he talked about oral knowledge, about his experience and about the amazing stories that he has heard and he has done as well. And then we had really great slides from Olushola where he talked about video production and the way that they tried and they're doing an amazing work in the field of recording stories and posting it on YouTube as well, but also to our Wikimedia projects. So I would like to ask all of you, you can post your questions in the chat, you can open your mic, like raise your hand and open your mic to our sharers. After this, we will have Amrit slides and then we will go to breakout room. Yes, Ramel?
Thank you so much. Now, these are very beautiful presentations. Now, mine goes to Shola. So, for instance, we have also tried to be able to document like our languages in our country. There are two challenges that we have been facing that I don't know how Nigeria has been handling. So one, for instance, is that when you come into the topic of that you deserve to really document in that particular tribe, because there are so many things that can end up becoming that can be very wide. So for us, we actually had to go in with a small little survey and to be able to ask specific topics on what needs to be covered. How do you identify the topics that could be of interest to people before you do the video shoots? And then the second question is about the issue of subtitling. I don't know. We have this. Some of the tribes we go to, not a lot of them really understand English, and not somebody we couldn't even sometimes get somebody to help us, translate this into English, and it's a very huge challenge. So I don't know, how have you been handling this? Some case studies may be different for you there, but maybe I could pick a few things that we could replicate in our country. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Romeo. The first question is about how do we get what fancy people, the type of questions that fancy the speakers. So in our case, what we have done is we focus on the use of indigenous language to tell stories of a particular set of people. We know that each people, each origin, each place, each locality have stories that are unique to them. And each of those uniqueness are they have a language around them. For example, if you get to a place, if they are speaking a particular dialect, they will tell us, one, how they get to where they are, what form of food they eat, their tradition, their clothing, and things like that. So these are the things that we focus. We understand that there are quite a lot of things we can do. We can as well talk about festival, we can talk about all the other things, but in our case, we decided to use indigenous language to tell stories about people and what is important to them. It is about what is important to the people. Now, when you talk about translation, so that is the reason why we have to engage a professional, a filmmaker. For example, when you are on site, because we know that many of us can only speak English and our own indigenous language. So how do we manage the language barrier? Before we travel, we will have done our researches about types of languages that we're about to encounter where we're going. And before we travel also, we will have also reached out to an indigenous person that will be an intermediary between us. And also some of those things that also help us in breaking this barrier. In Nigeria, there is usually a unified language, English or broken pidgin English. So even if you can't speak your language, we should be able to be unified by pidgin language and English. So if you speak your language, we will advise you to translate using pidgin. So with the pidgin, we will document we will use the pidgin to translate to English or any form of language that we want to subtitle whatever they might have said. That is the way we have been working around it. Thank you.
Thank you, Olushola. We have time for one more question from the chat. Romeo also said, and please, if you have any tools that might have helped you convert easily from MP4 to WebM files to be uploaded on Wikimedia Commons easily, thanks. Maybe we can collect also the tools that you use in your work and share that with our Let's Connectors. What do you think? Olushola?
Yeah, let me get the question. The question is, how have we been converting MP4 to Commons preferred format? Is that the question?
Yeah, from MP4 to WebM files that are for Commons.
Yes. We've been adopting two models. The first model, before the breakdown of the video to Commons, when we started, we used the video to Commons, so that was there. It was so easy. You don't need to do any form of conversion. So once, whatever format your video is, if you use the video to Commons, the tool will convert it directly to the Wikimedia Commons preferred format without you trying to bug yourself how that is done. But at some point in the project, the video to Commons got cracked. We couldn't use it. So what we did was to buy some, we procured some tools. I don't know the name by heart by now. I can quickly check before the end of this to send. We bought them. Those are the tools, software that we're using to convert from MP4 or whatever model format the videos were originally uploaded before it could be converted to Commons. I don't know if that answered the question.
Thank you very much, Olushola. We will have more discussions after, so please make sure to remember your questions or write them down in the chat or in the Jamboard so we can discuss it a little bit later. So as I previously said, now we will have case study number 2 from Amrit. And then we will divide into 2 breakout rooms where we can continue our amazing discussion for today. Amrit, please step on the floor.
Thank you so much, Karana. And thank you to Sakti and Olushola for sharing such lovely slides and information background on oral culture and emphasizing on its importance on documenting them. So about myself, my name is Amrit Sufi. I speak Angika. Angika is a language spoken in Bihar state of India. And I was born in Bihar, that state itself, but then for reasons of study and job, I moved to other states of India. So basically, after infancy, I was not really connected to my state other than living with my grandmother who spoke Angika, my mother tongue. So yeah, as I grew up, I grew more disconnected from, I can say, my language. And, as I grew, I went away from my family even more so. So I'd say an event or a particular thing I remember about, what brought me back to my language is while I was teaching my students, I was teaching post-colonial literature as a lecturer, where I was teaching. So I was teaching them postcolonial literature, some essays about how language is the first thing that is taken away from us when an identity is being taken away, whether by colonizers or a dominating force. And the irony of it was that I was teaching in English. It made me think that okay, other things aside, what am I doing for my language? What am I doing for my culture? If I tell people that I speak Angika, they're like, is that we haven't heard of that name before. So oh, that's so interesting. Where is it spoken? So that is where it began, that realization that, as an Angika speaker, as a practitioner, as a coming from that area and that language, what can I do? What are my privileges that I can utilize to preserve that? So, I began with documenting the folk songs from my home itself. And whenever I would go to my parents, I would, we can keep it back to the first slide. So, sorry. So when I would go to my home to my parents, I would record the folk songs that my aunts would be practicing, and then upload them on Commons, transcribe them as well, because in an attempt to make it useful for speakers of non-speakers of Angika as well. So from there, the realization stuck that it's not only my language that Angika that is underrepresented. India has more than 700 languages, and other countries in South Asia there's a huge language diversity, and there are several languages which are spoken only orally. They do not have textual material. That means that the knowledge carried within those language systems, those cultures, is not being represented, and much less online. So what the attempt with the next slide, please. The attempt with the toolkit that we created, that was the oral culture transcription toolkit, was to next slide. To provide people with a comprehensive set of tools that can be used to document their own culture, their own language within India or South Asia. So it is basically from basically divided into 3 sections. People can utilize the toolkit, the first part of the toolkit, for audio, to make good audio visuals. Of course, there lies value in making professional quality videos, engaging professionals, but also the fact that there is so much oral culture that is disappearing really fast. And people now have access to phone cameras, and with bit of training and mentorship, they can do it themselves. They can document their own culture. So so you can see that in the section A, there's a link to that part of the toolkit. You can go over there and look at it later. And then the second part is a questionnaire. So divided into 6 sections about like lifestyle, about past, about language, culture. So basically, it can be utilized to document oral culture. And there's also a questionnaire that can be used to document folk songs and folk tales. It can be taken as a model. You can ask certain questions, and like based on what type of folk art is practiced in your region, you can ask questions and record them as well. And the third section is how to upload the files on Commons. There are various ways. The direct way of video to Commons, and then there is the indirect way, going to a free software and utilizing that the free services, and also transcription or making subtitles of the videos. So all of that information is in this toolkit, and it is being edited over time as per input from people who utilize it, Wikimedia volunteers and other participants of the projects, the oral culture projects. Next slide, please. So this is a screenshot of the toolkit, the introductory part. And if you will go down this toolkit, you will see that the 3 sections are over there. You can click on them and look at them one by one. And also one thing is that it is based on 2 other toolkits. One is of Jewish Culture Elicitation Protocol by Wikitongues, which were edited or adapted to the South Asian region, and a questionnaire for that. And the second one was the Open Speaks Toolkit, which is a comprehensive toolkit on making good audio visuals on your own. So this toolkit employs the simplified version of that. So yeah, that's all about the toolkit. Next slide, please. And then, so this far we had a toolkit, and all the information that we could make available was within the toolkit that people can read and utilize it to document their culture. Now, what are the real needs of people on ground? What are the perceived needs and actual needs of people when it comes to documenting their oral culture, preserving their fast disappearing oral culture? So to understand that, we did a series of interviews and we did a series of interviews, 15 people of Wikimedians, the native language speakers, and language experts, people who have worked who have worked on the field, to understand that what do people actually need. Do they need support? Do they need awareness? Do they need technology? So it turns out that it is a mixture of all of them. That we came out with 4 major recommendations within another context of Wikimedia. The first one was moving out of text centrism and using Wikimedia projects innovatively. So yeah, Wikipedia is one of the most famous Wikimedia projects, but when it comes to utilizing or representation of horticulture, there are other Wikimedia projects which can be used innovatively, and they can be utilized along with each other. It is not only, as Olushola mentioned, that it does not have to be only commons that you go and upload your files. The file, an audio file or some video file which has been created or transcribed, that can be used as a reference on a Wikipedia article. So that I have done frequently on Angika Wikipedia. So for example, I created an article on a medicinal plant, and then the folklore about it. There is Angika folklore about that medicinal plant. About there are folk songs about it. So after I recorded that folk song and after I created that Wikipedia page, I put that link over there. The transcribed version, the transcribed file of about that video, and put that as a link on Wikipedia. So yeah, interconnectedness, moving out of text centrism is important. Then the second one is citizen archivists. They need to be promoted to create oral culture content. So what I mean by citizen archivists here specifically is people from their own culture. People, speakers, record their own language, their own culture, and their own. That is more ethical usually, and that is easier than finding outsiders, and they have more insight into their own culture, obviously. So what forms of support do they need, or how can they be promoted? It can be in the form of training or mentorship. It can be in the form of internet support or equipment support and tripod, etc. So that's the second recommendation. The third thing we found out was what our interviewees said, that creation of oral culture content relevant for given languages. That is really important for a representation of all forms of knowledge, including oral, on Wikimedia projects. And then D, as I already mentioned in point, another second recommendation was providing needed support to interested individuals. So yeah, documenting oral culture, that takes more time and a bit of more investment than simple, not simple, but small edits. You have to carve out time to go on the field, to create connections, and you have to basically take half a day off at least, and then go to the designated place, travel and all that. So yeah, support is required, infrastructure is required for interested individuals to document their oral culture. So yeah, these were some of the findings. Next slide, please.
Ik zit te zoomen. Je mag de voor.
Okay, so yeah, this is this screenshot of some of the output that we had from the needs assessment project. So while we were doing a needs assessment, while we were interviewing people, we also did a series of workshops online as well as in person to test the toolkit that we had created, the oral culture transcription toolkit. How can is it useful to people? What needs to be improved? And also to create a community of interested people in oral culture. So yeah, these are some of the outputs. You can it's on commons within this category of the needs assessment project. You can check that out later. Next slide, please. Yeah. So yeah, we had now in the third project, the the Indic oral culture project that was recently finished last in March 2024. So before this project, we had the findings of the needs assessment project and the toolkit, the oral culture transcription toolkit. That is, we had the resource, the information that was needed for people, and the practical tips. What is needed for people to actually go and document their own culture. So based on those learnings, we did an experimental project called Indic Oral Culture Project. Participants from 3 South Asian countries, India, Bangladesh, Nepal joined. They were selected and trained. They were given online trainings on how to, how to establish connections, how to record, given some basic information on how to create good quality videos with basic equipment like phone camera and tripod. So yeah, it was also economical that way. And yeah, based on these trainings, 9 communities, 9 language communities worked together to document oral culture of 11 languages. And yeah, post that, they were also given training on how to upload on Commons, how to transcribe the videos and put that on Wikisource, and how to link the created content to various other Wikimedia projects. So yeah, that was the whole Indic oral culture project. And next slide, please. So this is again a third screenshot of this is the output, basically the participant output of this project, the Indic Oral Culture project. So you can see the subcategories. There are 9 subcategories by the 9 subcategories of the 9 language communities that participated. There was Airavati, for example, Airavati language from India, Istan Thadu from Nepal. Then there is Gojri, Team Marathi, Odia, Tamil from India. Telugu, Tamil, Tulu also from India, and Project Coricut, that is the participants from Bangladesh who recorded 3 languages, oral culture in 3 languages. And yeah, you can see that about 150 files were created, 147 videos and about 3 audio files were recorded. Most of them folk songs, and majority of them were folk songs. A few folk tales were recorded. And as I said, it was an experimental project, so we had to keep the scope narrow. So basically, we have proposed another project. It is called Enhancing Indic Oral Culture on Wikimedia Projects. I will share the link to that in the chat. So in that project, we plan to expand uh, the whatever has been done so far to make it better, to make it the process more streamlined, bring in more collaborators, partners to make the process standard, bring more diversity of participants and more diversity of oral culture, languages, oral culture, and types of oral culture content, not only folk songs and folk tales, but also oral history, sayings, etc. So yeah, next slide, please. So if yeah, the person who is sharing that can open the first link and display a few seconds, like half a minute of it, that would be nice. And also please open the subtitle. There is the option of subtitle in Hindi. If you could open along with that would be nice. The last one. Yeah, you can stop sharing now, maybe. So, yeah, thank you. That was a small sample of one of the folk songs that was uploaded by one of the Ahirwati participants. And the second, you can later go on and look at them one by one yourself. The second one is a folk tale by the Atolu participant. And the third one is basically the whole gallery and the link to the report. So you can go through it. You can see the the project report, the numbers and all the details in there, and also the gallery if you so wish. Next slide, please. Okay, so yeah, this is basically a summarization of the Indica Old Culture project. So what all we did in this project, me, Iflaq, and Nitesh was also helpful from CISA2Q team was there. So yeah, what we did was we enhanced the old culture transcription toolkit based on the needs of the participant. It is because it's on Wikimedia, one things can be improved. That is the goal, right? Knowledge can be enhanced. So based on the feedback or the understanding and the needs of the participant, the toolkit keeps getting edited. And that was the one of the outputs of the project. The second one was, as I already mentioned, 146 videos and 5 audios of folk songs and folk tales were recorded. And third one was citizen archivists documented their own culture is ethical and effective. This is one of the learnings that we have from this project, is that that when people go on and document their own culture, it is usually more ethical and easier because people have understanding of their own culture. There is rarely a predatory anything instinct involved in there, and establishing contact, gaining faith, gaining understanding is easier than when you are an outsider to a culture. When you're an outsider, usually of course, if you are passionate about it, if you then it is recommended, but it can be economically it can be a bit tougher, and there can be a long travel time included in all of that. Basically, yeah, that is a learning, is that people who are from that culture, from that language, it is recommended that you go ahead and you take out your phone and learn how to use a tripod and record it. Find out the people who practice oral culture and record them and upload them on Commons and transcribe them, maybe. Yeah. The next learning was participants need varying level of support based on their unique needs. Some people might already know, they might have, a great equipment, so they won't need support with, a great, good quality video creation, or some might need support with subtitle creation, or some might just need more practical tips on, how to interact with people on the field. So yeah, basically, no, one size does not fit all when it comes to mentorship. So that is a necessary part of such a project. And yeah, the last one, a very important one, is that all culture is disappearing fast, and it needs to be documented at a larger level, and more areas in more languages, because yeah, it is, as cultures are changing, as there are, because of various socio-economic reasons, all culture is disappearing, and yeah, it is basically the clock is ticking, and the sooner we take action, the better. Next slide, please, the last one. Yeah, the future has two things, and what are the future plans is enhancing Indic oral culture and Wikimedia projects, open for discussion participation. So I'll share the link. Basically, that's the name of a project proposal that is under review right now. So yeah, you all can go through it and have a look. If it makes sense. So I've shared it in the chat. Then the next one is utilizing available resources to document one's own culture. So yeah, basically repeating myself, that utilize whatever you have got, whatever skills, whatever, if you need any help, then please feel free to get in contact with me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Amrit. This was really amazing. And thank you all for listening to our shares today. It's amazing to hear their experiences because they have been working a lot on documenting oral knowledge, and that can be a little bit of issue and a challenge to many of us. So now our next step is breakout room. So please make sure to feel comfortable to discuss, to ask our amazing sharers whatever you would like to know more, or to share your experience. As just a quick reminder, Let's Connect is a really safe space for all of us to learn and to ask questions and to talk about mistakes as well. Yes, Sakti, please.
Thank you so much, Corona, and I'm really sorry, everyone. I will not be able to join our breakout rooms today. I'm really sorry for that because there's other things that I need to do after this. But feel free to reach me out in my email should you like to discuss possible collaboration opportunities on the oral citations project. Here we go. Over to you, Corona. Thank you so much.
Thank you a lot, Sakti, and thank you very much for joining us. We know that it's very late for you, so please make sure to have some rest. And thank you very much for sharing your experience and telling us amazing stories. Okay, so now we will divide into 2 breakout rooms. If you need translations, please make sure to stay in the main room because it will be also translated, but in the other room we won't have translations since Zoom does not allow that. We will stop recording for this part of the